Show and Tell 28 or Sprint 3, as we're doing of our new contract with Unboxed. We've got some new people for you to hear from today, so it won't just be me talking. So there'll be some other people, some old, some new, but some new people to show and tell as well. But I'll introduce them as we go through. So why are we doing show and tells? What are show and tells? They're really one of the ways that we tell you about what we're doing. So trying to be as open and honest as we can be, both on things like progress, but also where we're heading, what things we're prioritizing, what we're doing, that kind of thing. We want to get any questions and feedback from you, so whether that's specific to anything that we're actually doing or just on the general program overall. So we always say that we're agile and user-centered. What does this actually mean? It means that we don't do everything all at once. We do small iterations. We tend to measure. We do user testing. We look at things like analytics and KPIs. We learn from that. We create user needs based around what our users actually tell us they want. And we reiterate. So we build prototypes. We write new content. We deliver a minimum viable product, and then we do that all again. So we go around that loop many times as we're working through our progress. But overall, we have one vision. We've had one vision from the start, and that's to give our residents more free time by making everything they do with the council faster and easier. This extends across everything that we try and present to them. So whether that's making sure they can find content really quickly or making sure that the services are as streamlined as possible, that's what we'll always endeavour to do. There is a kind of coming together of user needs, sometimes tech constraints, sometimes resource constraints, but overall we tend to have this one vision in mind when we're doing anything. So what are we doing at the moment? So we have a couple of really big projects on at the moment. One is the rationalization and migration of all our old legacy content. So as you're aware, just over 12 months ago, we became a new unitary authority, and we are slowly working through the content that was on the old legacy website. So we had 5 sites that we had about 4,500 pages on, and we're currently working to migrate all of that content. And when I say migrate, I mean rationalize, because an awful lot of it will hopefully be redundant or duplicated or won't actually be necessary. So what we're doing is looking to finish that by April 22 or mitigate against it somehow. And we're developing new digital services, whether that's around things like revs and bends or waste systems or payment for things. We're doing deeper integration opportunities with a lot of things that we're going on at the moment. So who's doing that for us? We've got a large cohort, both internally and externally. So we have the digital team. The digital team at the moment is still relatively small, but we sit very closely alongside the content team in Lloyd's area. For example, we have a delivery partner who is Unboxed, who you'll hear from some of those people a little bit later on. Torchbox is our technical partner. They're the people who do all the hard coding. So if you need something new and strange that we've not done before, Torchbox are normally the people who will do that for us. Another of our hugely important partners, a company called Scroll, they provide content designers and editors and content strategists, and you'll hear from one of those later on, a lady who's joined us new this sprint, Eva, who's going to come and talk to us about planning. I've mentioned the web content team. We also sit closely aligned with the service improvement team. So actually we're aligning our reviews with the service improvement work that's going on at the moment. And we will eventually touch most of the teams in the council. We've done lots of work, for example, with the Family Information Service, so a lot of work in children's. We've done lots of work with the adults through care advice bucks, that kind of thing. So we're working closely with most of the services. And over the next 12 months, we'll probably come knocking on the door of most of the services in the council. Very quickly, and I'm not planning on going through all of this, this is kind of the way that we do things, and it shows that iterative process. We start off with kick-off meetings, you gather information, we do audits, we get feedback, we iterate, we test, we collaborate, we write content, we collect feedback, we iterate and we test, and that all talks to the stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier. So that process is the process that we're currently going through with a number of our service reviews at the moment. And Eva will talk a little bit to that a little bit later on. So now What we've done in the last couple of weeks, very much focused around revs and bends, which we're going to talk about in a minute, planning, which Eva is also going to give some information on, and we're currently in the process of reviewing and implementing a new site information architecture. So that's the way that things are organized and rationalized on the site, which we talked about a little bit in previous show and tells as well. So now I'm going to pass over, I think, to Dominic, who's going to tell you a little bit about the revs and bends work that's going on. Dominic, if you want me to progress to the next slide, please just shout, but I will put up the first one.
Yeah, that'd be great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the Revs and Bends project that we've been involved with. Just to give you a little bit of overview. Just to give you a little bit of overview, the Revs and Bends team have brought, it's called Northgate Citizen Access Portal. And what it is another website that we'll link to, but it will contain all the Revs and Bends forms. So they'll all be in one place. Currently at the moment, we kind of got our legacy sites with different form providers. And from a user's point of view, it's sometimes a little bit, they're going backwards and forwards between content and online forms. So eventually when the portal's delivered, all the forms will be in one place. The content will be on the main Buckinghamshire Council website, and it will just be a clearer journey going between service content and making an application transaction payment. The good thing about it as well is that because it's all in one place, it'll all be integrated. So a customer will just be dealing with one central team. They won't have to go between different teams, have different questions. It'll all be in one place. The sort of project timeline for the Citizen Access Portal is December. So we've got a little while, but we saw the opportunity to start developing the content now in readiness for it. And with the scope of the project, the main content areas we're looking at are business rates, benefits and council tax. Business rates currently sits under the business section on the council website. Benefits sits under housing and benefits at the moment. They're kind of combined. And then council tax has its own separate category as well. Would you be okay to go to the next slide, Pete? Thanks. As part of the project, we kind of did like a discovery phase. This is just kind of taking a sort of step back and looking at where the service are now, what they're kind of looking to achieve going forward and how we can support them. So one of the things we did right at the start was kind of decide how we're going to make decisions. And Andy Green, who I'm working with, he wanted like a small project team just for quick decision making. Sometimes when you're going backwards and forwards with a service area, it can kind of go around the houses a little bit. So he felt that if we had this central core team, they could kind of deal with questions, or if they need to refer to people, then they could do that. But they were the kind of main people you'd go to. And that's kind of worked really well because you just know that if it's a business rates inquiry, you go to a certain person, the benefits a certain person, or council tax. So it's quite quick to get those connections and just get a quick response to a question. One of the things we also had to do was kind of map the content we were looking at. So we did quite a lot of work looking at the legacy websites, how they display the content, how they kind of use like PDFs, and how they kind of use online forms. Once we did that, we kind of got an overview of the total service, because sometimes when you're doing this work, you just look at your area rather than looking across the board. And by mapping it, it allowed us to do that and just kind of see what's going on. One of the things we also did was review other local authorities. We felt it was important that some authorities have gone through this process, so they would be best practice. And we kind of referenced sites like Birmingham, Harrow, Manchester City, other councils have gone through moving to a unitary status as well. So we found that really good, just to kind of look at how they describe services and the language they used, and see if we could kind of pick up any best practice. Alongside the discovery work, you always have to look at the analytics, what's actually happening behind the scenes. We might say we know it's a popular page, but what's happening with Google Analytics, how are customers searching for services, and what search terms are they using. Sometimes it just validates what you think, but a lot of the time it'll bring through insights, and that's kind of the important part of the discovery phase, finding these kind of insights that kind of get under the bonnet of your service area. So what we also did, we did some workshops with each of those content areas to kind of build up a kind of structure, this information architecture, how we hang all the content together. And the first one we put together perhaps didn't work so well, but then we go through the iteration, and that's the important thing. You don't kind of just go with your first kind of attempt at it. You keep on refining it. And by that refinement, you get insights, you get different ways of structuring the content. But what you also find is you kind of sometimes need that kind of breakout point where you suddenly think, well, we've done so much as we can, but we need another insight. We need to kind of bring in a different voice. And the importance of working, especially with Unbox, is bringing through that user testing, that voice of the customer. And I think where we are now, we kind of need that, because it gives us that next phase of the project and allows us to kind of validate what we've done, or kind of to change what we've kind of put together. So I think that's probably a good point to hand across to David to talk about the user testing.
Thanks, Dominic. So following on from Dominic's fantastic work so far in Revs and Bends, I'm going to work with Sarah from Unbox to do some user testing, just to make sure that we're structuring the content in a way that makes sense to users and that our approach to new content is helpful and easy to understand. To test the content structure Dominic has developed and a handful of content pages I'm going to write with Dominic's help in the coming days, we're planning what's called a moderated usability test. Although the name of this test is quite haughty, it's actually really simple. We speak to one user at a time and give them a series of tasks to complete based on the new content structure and content pages we've developed. During the test, we'll ask users to talk out loud so that we can understand the decisions they make and what's going through their head when they're looking at content. The sessions are recorded and teams can also watch live, which is a valuable way to see how real people interact with our pages and highlights issues and problems we may not have considered when developing content and how it's structured. Next slide, please. To carry out the moderated usability test, Sarah and I are doing a lot of preparation work, which you can see listed on this slide. Sarah is working on building the prototype information architecture in a tool called Figma, and I've begun the process of writing 6 content pages that cover all the areas in Revs and Bends. That is council tax, benefits, and business rates. Once all these materials are ready, we'll recruit users to take part in the test. And by the time the next show and tell comes along, hopefully we'll have some interesting results to share with you.
That was a rookie mistake. Thank you very much, David. As well as the great stuff that's happening in David's world in terms of, and Dominic's world in terms of content, we're also looking at potentially what the deeper integration pieces with Citizen Access Portal might be, as well around some of the kind of payments or direct debit type activity in there as well, which may give us a little bit more insight into what we think we need to do for that. I'm now going to pass over to Eva, who is new to us this week or this sprint, so she can give a little bit of background about herself as well, but she's going to talk a little bit about planning and environment. So Eva, over to you.
Thanks very much, Peter. Hello, everyone. I'm Eva. I'm a content designer via Scroll, and I'm supporting the digital team and the other members of the cohort that Peter outlined during his part of the presentation. And of course, yes, here to support and help to migrate and rationalize the content on the planning and environment section of the website. So we're going to be involved in activities very similar to what you just heard Dominic and David outline in actual fact. So we're going to be running a discovery phase. And in that, we're going to be working very closely with the digital team. We're also going to be speaking to business stakeholders, understanding their services and what they would like to get out of this process as well. So the discovery phase has kicked off. We had our first session today with members of Climate and Energy, the Climate and Energy team, and we spoke to them about their aspirations, how the service itself is used by users, what they would like to get out of it, just to really try and understand where they want to go. And essentially, that's the type of data and background that the discovery sessions enable us to collate. We're also going to be looking at a lot of data as well. As Dominic outlined when he was talking about Revs and Bends, the data gives us a fuller picture. It gives us true, deep insights into what users do or don't do very well or are unable to do, what they're looking for, the type of services they come to us for as well. And it's rich data. It enables us to understand exactly what it is we need to provide them with and how best to build it as well. So we'll audit the content, we'll analyze the data, we'll collate more data if we feel that it's needed so that we can get a fuller picture of what our users are actually trying to do. We'll also then be collaborating a huge amount with product owners and subject matter experts to then come up with a content structure and an IA. This gives us, if you like, the roots, the bones of plan that we can then build to understand the navigation, how our users use the website, where they need to go to, where they often find it difficult to get to certain parts of the website. So it's important, it's an important starting block, essentially, once we've analysed all of the data and held the discovery sessions to understand more clearly what we need to help our users achieve. Next slide, please. So myself and Lil, we're actually only here for another 9 weeks. So we have a finite period in which we are going to help with this migration and rationalization. So our focus is going to be on supporting the planning teams, and in particular, starting off, as I said, with climate and energy today. We're going to prioritize the content work for the later sprints. And then we're going to be looking at putting together a content plan with all of our stakeholders as well, so that there's a clear direction, a clear vision for where we need to go and how we're actually going to achieve that. We're then going to deliver new content. We're going to test that with users to make sure that it is what they need and it is what we hope to be able to provide them with as well. And in terms of future steps, it will be providing very clear workflows and guidelines for other members of the team that will take over the work once we move on, to ensure that the process that we've implemented is replicable so that it can be used for other parts of the website and any other further elements of this rationalization project going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eva. Some really good stuff happening. Planning is one of our biggest sections. As many of you will know, of the 4,500 pages, I think that we are looking at rationalizing, roughly 1,000 sit within planning and environment. So you could say it's a quarter of the website. I don't think it will be a quarter of the website going forward. Lots of duplication on old district sites around things like planning applications, purchasing of planning services and those kind of things. So that's it really for the show and tell part of it. Just some quick things on what we're doing at the moment and what we're doing next. So we are currently, as I spoke about in one of the previous show and tells, implementing a new information architecture for the site. So this is the way that the content on the site is structured. So we are making changes to the homepage. We're making changes to content pages underneath that, all driven by data that we've collected either through engagement with exercises like card sorting, which is where people put groups of cards together they feel live together, but also click testing, which we've done recently, and the analytics that we've been running for the last 7 or 8 months on the site as well, as to where people go for their content, what they find useful and how they find it. Further work on planning, IA and content, as Eva said, it's an ongoing process. We've got this 9-week period when her and Lil are with us. We are working at the moment closely with the parking team. So David has been doing some work over the last few weeks to rewrite the parking content, much of which I think is done. So we're going through and iterating on that at the moment and looking at the information architecture specifically around highways and transport at the moment. Something that I've mentioned before a few times, campaign template is in final QA. We'll hopefully be released next sprint. Our sprint finishes tomorrow. And then we have a clarification of our roadmap, which we've shown before, which is happening with Cabinet after the elections. So we obviously have elections on the 6th of May. After that, we think that the first informal Cabinet, which is where I would normally go and present this, is actually the date of the first full Cabinet, or full council meeting. So we're not sure whether it's going to take place, but we're proceeding anyway on the basis that we kind of know what we're doing and people have agreed that this is what we're doing, but it still has to be signed off by Cabinet. We're actually making changes as well at the moment. We had some planning. The planning work, for example, wasn't going to start until the summer. When I say summer, July, August, we've pulled that forward, partly because of the size of it and partly because of availability of people. So that's it for this show and tell. If anybody's got any questions, either drop them in the chat or put your hand up and shout. Otherwise, next show and tell will be 13th of May, and we will see you then. Thank you very much, everybody.